I really would like my old life back where I could walk the streets like a normal person, but got people coming up asking.
We all dream about hitting the jackpot someday. It will make us happy, right?
I want you to deal with your problems by becoming rich.
But you might want to think again after hearing the disastrous stories of some lotto winners. Sadly, many lotto winner stories actually end tragically. From lotto winners who never got paid to people who didn't know how to manage their wealth, these lotto stories are simply mind-blowing. Rachel Kennedy. Take a look at this 19-year-old. She thought she had it all, but it's unbelievable how life can throw you under the bus in a split second. Rachel Kennedy is a university student, and she couldn't believe it when her numbers appeared on a Euro Millions draw for a prize of $182 million. The 19-year-old from Hertfordshire called her mother and boyfriend Liam McCrohan into the room, where the three imagined how the teen's life might change after that. However, a call to lottery bosses Camelot immediately ended the fantasy, leaving business undergraduate Rachel absolutely heartbroken. It was a system bug that played with her dreams. A bug sent her an alert the next day naming her the winner. The ticket was not purchased automatically prior to the draw, and unfortunately, it had not been accepted. Camelot gave Rachel the best of luck in future draws after she went public with a heartbreakingly unlucky close call. I called the number thinking I had won $182 million, and they said, "Yeah, you've got the right numbers, but you didn't have the funds in your account for the payment of the ticket, so it didn't actually go through," the teenager explained. I was overjoyed when I believed I had won, but when I found out I hadn't, Liam was even more disappointed than I was. When she checked her account, she was surprised with a notice stating that her numbers were a winning match. Her heart had sunk, she recounted, when she discovered the issue shortly thereafter. Camelot stated in March of last year, "We're aware of Rachel's story and hope she gets in early to buy a ticket for the next big draw." That's one way to get heartbroken, but not as broken as the next guy, who lost his house, wife, daughter, and granddaughter after hitting the jackpot. Andrew Jack Whitaker. When Virginia native Jack Whitaker won big in 2002, he was already a billionaire. He chose a $113 million lump sum settlement, but ended up overpaying and making numerous disastrous investments. At one point, he was even robbed. After 5 years, all of the earnings had vanished. You might be wondering how something like this can happen. Andrew Whitaker Jr. won the lottery on Christmas in 2002 and had his 15 minutes of fame, but it rapidly wore off and things went downhill. Whitaker became an overnight sensation after winning the greatest U.S. lottery payout with a single ticket at the time. But it all began to crumble when the businessman and his family took up a private plane to appear on morning news shows to discuss his win and the $113.4 million lump sum award. However, things quickly turned sour. He was charged with DUI twice and sued several times, including once by 3 female casino employees who accused him of abuse. His family has also suffered a number of unfortunate deaths. Whitaker's drinking and gambling problems worsened, and he and his wife divorced. In 2004, a friend of his substance-abused granddaughter was discovered dead at his home. But the series of misfortunes were not over for Whitaker. His daughter, Ginger Whitaker Bragg, passed away in 2009 at the age of 42 following a long fight with cancer. "I wish I'd torn that ticket up," Whitaker remarked shortly after his daughter passed away. Whitaker suffered a home fire in Virginia in 2016. He was also the victim of several burglaries. Thieves stole a total of $100,000 from him at various times. And when the day came for his last breath at the age of 72, Whitaker was broke and miserable. It seems like some people aren't supposed to handle money, just like the next guy, who lost every penny of the $27 million after a major shopping spree and a substance abuse problem. David Lee Edwards. David Lee Edwards of Kentucky spent the majority of his $27 million win in less than 5 years on a home, expensive automobiles, a Learjet, and huge doses of narcotics. He passed away in 2013 at the age of 58, impoverished and alienated from his wife. David Lee Edwards of Ashland, Kentucky, was a convicted offender. He initially made the news in 2001 when he won $27 million in the Powerball lottery, which he referred to at the time as a poor man's dream. "I've made mistakes in the past, but they were a long time ago. I paid for my mistakes, and I went on with my life, and I straightened out my life, and I've been productive ever since," Edwards said after his 2001 victory. "I am who I am today because of God, and I am grateful. I can't undo the past, but I can make a difference in the future. But unfortunately, he wasn't true to his words. Edwards eventually spent the money on luxury items such as an enormous automobile collection and a $1.6 million mansion in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. And by 2006, he had spent all of his earnings. Edwards spent a third of his life in prison due to armed robbery charges before winning the jackpot. Edwards appeared to have it all after winning the lottery, but after a major shopping spree and a substance addiction battle, he lost everything. If he followed my advice, he'd be pulling in about $85,000 per month for the rest of his life, Edwards' financial advisor James Gibbs said. After Edwards' victory, Gibbs had placed Edwards' money in stocks and bonds, but instead of leaving it there, he used it to fund his luxurious lifestyle. Then in December 2013, at the age of 58, he passed away broken and all alone. Unfortunately, that is the sad reality of life. Like they say, always expect the unexpected, just like the next story. Coming up is Michael Hill, who went as far as to kill his wife after hitting the jackpot. Michael Todd Hill. In 2007, Michael Hill won $10 million in an Ultimate Millions scratch-off ticket purchased at a convenience store in North Carolina. Hill was charged with the crime of killing his wife 13 years later in 2020 and told the court he was impoverished and couldn't afford counsel. He was sentenced to life in prison for the demise of 23-year-old Kiana Graham. According to the state lottery administrator, Hill played an Extreme Millions scratch-off ticket at a petrol station in North Carolina and came up short in August 2017. That year, he went back to the cashier and opted to play Ultimate Millions instead. "I joked with her, 'How come you didn't sell me a winning ticket?' Hill stated. He went back to his car and began scratching in the parking lot. It didn't take long for him to realize he had a winning ticket. When I got to the dollar symbol, I knew I had won something," he explained in 2017. "I saw 1, then 0, and it still didn't hit me." Hill returned inside and inquired about the ticket. "She told me, 'Sir, I think you just won $10 million. He explained to the state lottery. He immediately called his wife to inform her of the life-changing news. "I told her to pack her bags because we just won $10 million. According to the lottery, Hill agreed to accept a flat sum of $6 million, which amounted to a little above $4 million after state and federal tax withholdings. He stated that his plan was to pay off debts and invest in his wife's business. Now, it's time to meet his wife, Kiana Graham. Hill was almost 3 years later in the midst of an 18-month relationship with Graham, but they had a history of domestic issues, a dark red flag. When her daughter failed to show up for work as a prison officer at Pender Correctional Institution, Graham's mother filed a missing persons complaint on July 20th, 2020. On the same day the report was submitted, the maids at the Shore Stay Hotel in Charlotte, North Carolina, entered room 310 and discovered Graham on a bed with a single shot wound to the head. Authorities believe Graham was sleeping when she was fatally shot with a .45 caliber handgun. Hill ultimately admitted to police that Graham met her tragic end by him while she was messaging males at the hotel. Isn't it crazy what money can do to a sane man? The same thing happened in the next story, where a man called William Post had to sleep with one eye open, scared for his life after hitting the jackpot. William Bud Post. William Post won $16.2 million in 1988, but things swiftly went south. Post won the prize while playing a lottery game in Pennsylvania. He was $1 million in debt just a year after winning the lottery. How can a millionaire be $1 million in debt, you might ask? When he won $16.2 million in the Pennsylvania lottery in 1988, he went on a buying binge that included residences, boats, and a plane he wasn't certified to fly. Post was not just broke again, but also one horrifying $1 million in debt just a year later. Post's brother was also jailed for hiring a hitman to assassinate him. Post ended up declaring bankruptcy, doing time in jail for pointing a gun at a debt collector, and being duped out of a third of his money by his landlord. Everybody dreams of winning money, but nobody realizes the nightmares that come out of the woodwork or the problems, Post said, and wise words have never been spoken. He passed away in 2006 at the age of 66 while living on disability payments, leaving behind his 7th wife and 9 children. Have you ever heard the story of a lottery winner who got shot the next day of issuing the ticket? Don't go anywhere because that is coming up next. Uruj Khan. A lottery winner who had a massive $1 million reward met his tragic end just weeks after purchasing a winning scratch-off ticket. His name was Uruj Khan, who immigrated to the United States from India, established a dry cleaning business with his wife in Chicago's West Rogers Park area. With a scratch-off lottery ticket, he won $1 million. He chose to receive it in the form of a $600,000 lump sum, which, after taxes, amounted to more than $424,000. But just one day after his lottery check was issued, but before he received it, the 46-year-old was found demised. He passed away from cyanide poisoning. Khan's estate included the lottery check, was divided between his wife and her now estranged stepdaughter after a protracted probate struggle. So did Khan meet his tragic end by the hands of his wife? Was that a ploy to own his assets and wealth? Miraj Khan, his sister, remains certain that her brother's wife and father-in-law were involved in her brother's death, calling it an open and shut case. Shabana Ansari, the wife, is following her attorney's advice not to talk, but she has previously denied any involvement in the tragedy. Her father has done the same. Unfortunately, the unresolved issue left Miraj Khan's family feeling helpless and anguished. "Honestly, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about him," she said of her brother. "Each and every day. When I look at my niece and remember things we did, I get the impression he's saying to me, 'How come you're not doing anything about it?'" That is indeed a sad story. Coming up next is a lovely lady whose life got absolutely thrashed by the insane amounts of money. Mac W. Metcalf. A couple who received a multi-million-dollar windfall and eventually met their demise a few years later. In 2000, a $34 million lottery prize was won by Mac Metcalf and his divorced wife, Virginia G. Merida. They rapidly gathered their money and started splurging on expensive goods. The couple probably felt that anything was within their financial range when they were previously concerned with paying their monthly bills and timely apartment payment. Metcalf found fulfillment in a Southern Kentucky residence designed to resemble George Washington's Mount Vernon home and several classic vehicles. Merida decided to buy a Mercedes-Benz and live with numerous cats in a home close to the Ohio River. The lottery winners, however, soon had problems after a brief time of relaxation brought on by the sudden infusion of money. In 2003, just 3 years after their victory, Metcalf and Merida both passed very quickly. Merida was found dead in her bed by her son, Metcalf, who passed away from complications due to his drinking. Police stated that they did not have any suspicions of wrongdoing at the time Merida passed away, likely from a substance overdose. According to rumors, Metcalf had been into legal issues multiple times before he passed away. The two had purchased a $3 ticket at a truck stop in Florence, Kentucky, and by coincidence won $34.1 million in 2000. The couple's friends and family said that the deaths of the two were caused by significant sums of money being given to individuals who had personal problems and no prior expertise handling such a lot. A lottery lawyer stated, if he hadn't won, he would have worked like regular people and might have had 20 years left. But if you give someone with difficulties that much money, it merely encourages them to kill themselves. Similar sentiments were expressed by David Huff, the buyer who eventually acquired the Mount Vernon-style house from the Metcalf's estate. It was a textbook example of a person who had never had wealth and didn't know how to deal with it, according to Huff. I believe that once he received the money, things only got worse. Well, I can't agree more to that statement. Some say that the best decision after hitting the jackpot is to hire a financial advisor. But in the next story, that advice proved to be terribly false, which caused the life of an innocent man. Florida man Abraham Shakespeare. In the late 2000s, Shakespeare hit the jackpot and won millions of dollars on a lottery ticket. Abraham Shakespeare is a resident of Florida who won the lotto in November 2006. He won the $30 million prize, but chose the $16.9 million settlement to assist his family and friends. He used the money to purchase his dream home as well as homes for his cousins. Shakespeare also assisted a local hairdresser by repaying $87,000 in business debt. While winning the lottery may appear to be a pipe dream, Shakespeare eventually struggled with the enormous sum of money since he wasn't sure how to manage it. It was frightening because he had no idea how to manage his money. He had an entourage around him, but he didn't know half of them, his cousin Tammy Edom said. They were aware that he couldn't read. They were well aware of his inability to write. They were well aware that he could only sign his name. He was their cash cow, Cedric Odom, his other cousin, continued, and they milked him daily. Shakespeare pulled out of the spotlight after getting advice from a friend, owing to the hoopla surrounding his lotto victory. But here is the terrifying part. Shakespeare went missing 2 years after winning the lotto. He was discovered to have met his demise from a gunshot wound in the backyard of a Florida home after a 3-month search. It's time I introduced you to Moore. Shakespeare and Moore met in 2008 through a mutual acquaintance. Moore agreed to write a book on him to explain his tale at the time, and she later became his financial counselor. She was arrested in February 2010 by the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office and charged with being an accessory after the fact. But the charge was swiftly raised to first-degree murder in association with the demise of Shakespeare. In December 2012, a Florida jury found her guilty and sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Moore has maintained her innocence over the years, but Florida courts upheld her conviction in 2015 and again in 2019. They eventually labeled her ongoing allegations as confusing, conclusory, and ambiguous. If you are interested, Shakespeare's narrative is featured in the Hulu series Web of Death. Have you seen it? Although he had the greatest luck in the lottery, sadly that luck wasn't there when he needed it. In the next case, this $18 million winner got her luck rubbed out in a completely different situation. Janet Lee. When a lottery winner in Illinois hit a sizable jackpot in 1993, her wishes came true. The 60-year-old Janet Lee took home a stunning $18 million. She divided the prize money into 20 portions totaling $620,000 per year, which she used for charitable causes. In the late 1970s, Lee relocated from South Korea to the United States with her husband and 3 stepchildren. She ran a wig shop in Missouri and donated to several charities after winning. Lee lived the high life for the following 8 years, dining with leaders like President Bill Clinton. But that didn't last for long. After 10 years of funding and distributing donations, combined with credit card debt and occasional gambling, Lee squandered her riches. She left the University of Washington a large portion of her wealth, which was utilized to build a library and a reading room at the law school that bears her name. The amount Lee donated was kept a secret by the university, but a friend of Lee's claimed she gave $1.5 million. When Lee's stepdaughter graduated and she made the parents' honor roll as a Life Elliott benefactor, it was later reported that Lee made a second donation of between $500,000 and $1 million. Unfortunately, Lee's bank account quickly ran dry after she donated large sums of money to educational, political, and social causes. Thus, just 8 years later, Lee had filed for bankruptcy and had less than $700 in a bank account while facing $2.5 million in debt. Isn't it so true that money has the ability to turn around one's life? To be better or worse, that's for you to decide. Coming up next is a couple who hit a whopping $13 million, but ultimately had to file bankruptcy. Alex and Rhoda Toth. This couple only had $24 to their name in May 1990 when they cashed in on a $13 million Florida Lotto jackpot. The couple took their money in payments in the ominous amount of $666,666 until 2010. Over the next few years, the Toths went through various family squabbles and were charged with filing fraudulent income tax returns by the IRS, which ultimately led to bankruptcy filings in 2001 and 2002. Rhoda Toth was quoted as saying that the money has torn us apart and caused the loss of friends and family members. Sometimes I wish we could give it back, she said. Alex Toth passed away broke and facing federal charges in 2008 at the age of 60. Do you know Americans have only a 1 in 3 billion chance of winning the $1 billion Mega Millions jackpot? But be aware that nearly 70% of the lottery jackpot winners spend their winnings within 7 years. These incidents serve as examples of the disasters that might result from unexpected and considerable wealth, right? It's clear that the past lottery jackpot winners have met their tragic end, convicted of the same and gone from this world penniless. Why do you think all the lotto winners end up miserable? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching.